Hi there smart moms and welcome to another video. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. This is my little platform where I turn struggling math students into maths masters, and I post videos weekly, so subscribe and turn on the notification button if you want to know when I post new videos. So in this video I'm going to be teaching you about exponents, right? How to apply exponents and then the 5 exponential rules. Okay, remember we're looking at exponents with relation to algebra. So in this section, there's going to be numerical values as well as variables. Okay, if you want a worksheet to practice the work that is covered in this video, you can find that in the description box below. And yeah, let's jump into the video and get the ball rolling. Let's jump into exponents. I like to start from the beginning. I like for you to understand what we're actually even working with before we actually jump in. So I'm going to use certain terminology when we're working through this lesson, and I just want you to be able to understand what that means. So the first thing you must understand, when something is in exponential form, there's certain elements to exponential forms, right? Firstly, we have a number or a sign in front of a variable, then we call that a coefficient, right? Then the variable itself we will see as the base. Okay, now the base can be a number also. The base is literally what has the power, and then the 2 is then the exponent, right? So the base is what has the exponent. The exponent is the numerical value to which we are raising the value, to which power, and then the number and the sign in front of the variable is considered our coefficient. Now we've got 5 laws in exponents that you are required to know. I'm going to work through the 5 laws now. I'm going to tell you what the law is. I'm going to give you a few examples on each law. And what I want you to remember is that when you are being asked exponential questions, they can ask you questions that could include all 5 laws. So I'm going to go through them individually, and then I'm going to give you an exercise where you're going to have to practice all 5 laws. Now, it's very important that you practice this because it becomes easier the more you do, but in the beginning it can seem a little bit overwhelming. This is one of those sections that you have to practice. You have to do a lot of questions to be able to really let this sink in, but once it sinks in, you've got it. Okay, so let's look at the different laws. 5 laws. Law number 1. The law says when bases are the same, so remember what the bases were in the previous slide. When bases are the same and you are multiplying those bases, you add the powers. So what it's saying is, if I've got a base here, which is x, that's the same as this base, which is also x, and I'm multiplying, then I add the powers, right? So that's law number 1. So let's see how we apply that. Let's say we've got a couple of questions here. This is all multiplication. I see I've got A's as well as B's. So what you're going to do is you're first going to look at the one variable, because remember, you only add the ones that have the same power. So if I've got the A's here, I've got A. So I'll say, okay, A here is 1. The power here is 5. And A here is 1. So because I'm multiplying and all the A's have the same base, I add their powers, so I've got 1 plus 5 plus 1. And that will give me A to the 7. Then I look at the B's. Again, I've got 3, 1, and 1. So 3, 1, and 1. And that will then give me B to the 5. So again, what is the law? If bases are the same and I'm multiplying those bases, I add the powers. Right. If we look at number 2, again, we are multiplying, but here we've got numbers as well as variables, 2 different types of variables. We've got A and B. So what you're going to do here is you're going to first multiply all the numerical values. So you're going to say negative 20 times negative 4 times 3, and we'll get the answer to the value, which is 240. Then you go to the variables, right? I've got A here, which is one of them. Then I've got 2 A's here, and then I've got another 1. So it's 1 plus 2 plus 1. will give me this variable. And then if I look at the b's, I've got 3, 3, and 1. And I add those powers together. So ultimately, my final answer will be 240 a to the 4 and b to the 7 when I actually simplify those powers. So that is law number 1. Now let's look at law number 2. Law number 2 says, when bases are the same and you are dividing, you subtract the second power from the first one. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So if I'm dividing and bases are the same, I say this one minus this one, which gives me that. Also remember, a fraction line also means division. So this can also be expressed as xa over xb. And then to find the answer, I will take these powers. The top one minus the bottom one. Let's see how we apply this law now. Okay? So firstly, if I've got a question like this, again, I now go sign, number, variables. So sign here is, and I'll look at the numerical values. I've got negative 18 divided by 3 would then give me the negative 6. Then I go to the a's. I've got two a's here. This one's 4 and this power is 1. So I say 4 minus the 1. Then if I look at b, I've got 8 minus the 2. Okay? And so I simplify that. It will give me negative 6, a to the 3, and b to the 6. Let's do another one. In this question, so I know this looks overwhelming. Okay, so essentially the way I want you to see this is a fraction. So it ultimately means the top number divided by the bottom. But you have to simplify the top values first and simplify the bottoms and then divide the answers. Okay, so if I look at the top now, you'll see I have to actually apply law number 1 because I have multiplication. Right, so I will find the answer of this, and then I will find the answer of this, and then I will divide those answers. Okay, so let's have a look. We said negative 14 times negative 2 gives me positive 28. Then I've got 4 A's here with 1 A here, and that's how I get the 5. I've got 8 B's and 1 B, and that's how I get the 9. Then at the bottom, 7 times negative 1 gives me negative 7. I've got A and A2, which gives me A3. And then I've got B2 and B, which gives me B3. Okay? And then I actually can divide this. Okay? So this divided by 7, right, will then give me negative 4. Right? 28 divided by negative 7 is negative 4. And then 5 minus 3 is 2. And 9 minus 3 is 6. And that is how you apply law 2. Let's look at law 3 and 4. And we do this one together because essentially you'll see that they look very similar. What it involves is I've got a bracket, and if I've got a bracket between powers, it means I'm multiplying those powers. So let me show you what it looks like. So if I've got x here, and I've got a power, and then I've got a bracket, and then I've got another power. So essentially I've got a bracket between two powers, then we multiply. So you must now remember, when we are multiplying the bases, we add the powers. When we are dividing the bases, we subtract the powers. When there's a bracket in between the powers, we multiply those powers. Okay. Also, if I was multiplying inside the bracket, right, I would then take each power and multiply it by the power that's outside, right? And that would then give me my answer. So let's see how we would apply this. Okay, firstly, if I look at this is now this entire bracket squared. Take note, everything inside the bracket must be squared. So I've got negative 3 that must be squared, and I've got a to the 6 that must be squared. So negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3, which will then give me negative 3, which is then 9. But take note here, this is 1, the power is 1 here, multiplied by 2. Here I've got a bracket in between, so I've got 6 times 2, which gives me that. So essentially I have negative 3 squared, which is 9, and then I've got 6 multiplied by 2, which is a to the 12. Okay, here take note, the 8 is not being cubed, only the a to the power of 2. So that means I keep the 8, I multiply the 2 multiplied by the 3 there, and essentially I end up with 8 to the 6. Okay, so in this case, I have two ways that I can solve this. I can use law number 1, multiply, add the powers, which I'll show you quickly how to do. So here we would say we're multiplying, bases are the same, so we add the powers, and then we find the answer, which is 12, right? And then we multiply those two together, which gives you 8 to the 24. Or what you can do is we can apply this law number 4 here, where it says I take each of the powers and multiply it. But remember, this only applies if there's a multiplication in between. Okay, so here we end up with 9 here. So this is just the second method, the way you could have calculated it. So you could say 9 times 2 and 3 times 2, which will essentially give me 18 times 6. Right? And then again, applying law number 1, adding the powers, that will give me 18 plus 6, which will ultimately give me a to the 24. Okay. So I want you to, when you're studying it, it's fine if you study 3 and 4 together. Because essentially the rule or the law that you must remember is if there's a bracket between powers, you're going to multiply those powers. Okay. The last law, law number 5. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. Okay, so you can type anything in your calculator, you put it in a bracket, you put it to the power of 0, the answer is 1. Okay, so let's see how we apply this. Right, so let's say we've got x to the 0, answer is 1. Fine, number 2, here we've got 4 times x to the 0. Now remember, this power only applies to the x, so I've got 4 multiplied by the 1, which is then 4. Okay, next one, I've got a whole bracket. The whole bracket is to the power of 0, which means this power applies to everything. So that would be, give me the answer of 1. Last one, again, I've got 9 and this bracket is 0. So again, I've got 9 times 1, because this whole thing is 1, and I end up with 9. Okay, now it is your turn. So I would suggest just jot down the laws, law 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, only till 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you look at these questions now and you try and answer them, but constantly going back to your laws to make sure that you understand, and then you can see, okay, which law should I apply here? Which one is multiplying? Which one is dividing? Which one do I have brackets between the powers, etc.? And then come back and I will give you the answers and you can see if you're on the right track. Okay, so pause the video now and attempt these 5 questions. Okay, so let me give you the answers and hopefully you feel good about your answers. For the first question, right, you had to multiply the numbers, which give you -6, and then add the powers, which is 4 plus 5, and your answer would then have been -6x to the 9. The second one is the division. So again, we have to now subtract powers. So your answer there would have been 5x to the 5, y to the 2. The third one, x to the 0, we now know is our fifth law, which is 1 over 5x, and your answer is just 1 over 5x. The fourth one, you'll see we've got a power and we've got brackets between powers, which means we multiply, remembering that the 2 now belongs to both the 4 and the x3. So if I square them, I get 16x to the 6, and then they want me to multiply this by a quarter. So if I multiply the quarter in, essentially I'm going to say 1 times this and then divided by the 4. Okay, so that will give me 4. So essentially think of it as, if there's a 1 on top and there's a 4 at the bottom, whatever's in the bracket, you're essentially dividing by the denominator. So I'm saying this divided by the denominator, and that's how I got the 4x to the 6. Last one for this question, okay, you multiply the numerators together, multiply the denominators together, and then divide the answer. So here you would have gotten 8x to the 8, y to the 5, if I multiply this, right, using law number 1. And the bottom one, same story, I end up with -8x to the 4, y to the 2. And now I divide by saying 8 divided by negative 8 is negative 1. That's where I got the negative. And then I subtract the top power from the bottom one's, I subtract the bottom one's power from the top, right? 8 minus 4 gives me 4, 5 minus 2 gives me 3, and your final answer is the negative x to the 4, y to the 3. And that is exponents. Alright, so thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you found it helpful and that you feel confident about exponents. If you have any questions, please add it in the comment section below. I'd also appreciate the thumbs up if you found that it was helpful. Right, remember, if you want to practice the work in this video, you can find a worksheet on my website or in the description below. If it's not in the description below, I will add it as soon as I can. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.